Well, hello. One more video for tonight. I just couldn't help myself since I just read the one of the most recent editorials in the Wall Street Journal, which we all know our friends in Wall Street and at the Wall Street Journal now under the direction of Rupert Murdoch, which owns most of the media in the Western world as it stands. So here is this approved editorial. It is basically coming out not only in favor of Wall Street, so not in favor of us, but is also very much coming out in favor of torturing detainees. So the Wall Street Journal editorial had the following to say a few days ago. The release of Carl Levin's report on the Bush administration's alleged torture policies was a formality. The senator's conclusions were politically predetermined a long time ago. Still, I'm sorry, I'm not an American. And a claim that has greeted this agitprop is embarrassing, even by Washington standards. According to the familiar torture narrative that Mr. Levin sanctifies, President Bush and senior officials sanctioned detainee abuse, first by refusing to accord Al-Qaeda members, which, by the way, this has never been proven, of course, but the Wall Street Journal states it as fact, by Al-Qaeda members Geneva Convention rights, and second by conspiring to rewrite the legal definition of torture. The new practices were then imposed on military leaders and spread through the chain of command. Therefore, Mr. Bush, former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, and their deputies are morally and legally responsible for all prisoner abuse since 9/11, not least Abu Ghraib. Here's the Wall Street Journal. Nearly every element of this narrative is dishonest. As officials testified during Mr. Levin's hearings and according to documents in his possession, senior officials were responding to requests from the CIA and other commanders in the field. The flow was bottom-up, not top-down. Those commanders were seeking guidance on what kind of interrogation was permissible, as they tried to elicit information from enemies who want to murder civilians. At the same time, no one less than Barack Obama's Attorney General's nominee, Eric Holder, was saying that terrorists didn't qualify for Geneva Conventions. That might actually be correct. We'll have to check into that. This was the context in which the Justice Department wrote the so-called torture memos of 2003 and 2002. You'd never know it from the Levine Jeremaid that these are legal, not policy documents. They are attempts not to dictate interrogation guidelines, but to explore the legal limits of what the CIA might be able to do. We all feel much safer now. It would be irresponsible for those charged with anti-terror policy to do anything less. In a 2007 interview, former CIA Director George Tenet described the urgency of that post-9/11 period. I've got reports of nuclear weapons in New York City, apartment buildings, apartment buildings that are going to be blown up, and planes that are going to be flying into airports all over again. Plot lines that I don't know about. I don't know what's going on inside the United States. Actionable intelligence is the most effective weapon on the war on terror, which can potentially save thousands of lives. We know that the most aggressive tactic ever authorized was waterboarding, which was used in only 3 instances against hardened high-ranking Al-Qaeda operatives, including Abu Zargai, after he was picked up in Pakistan in 2002. U.S. officials say the information he gave up under torture foiled multiple terror plots and led to the capture of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the architect of 9/11. As Dick Cheney told ABC this week, this was a time there 3 or 4 years ago when about half of everything we know about Al-Qaeda came from one single source. So this is Sheikh Mohammed, who was captured in Pakistan. He was previously employed basically by the CIA. And so, yeah, you might say someone was captured, you know. And if you look at this individual in some of those photos just alone, you can tell what's going on. I don't think anything else needs to be said here. But of course, the Wall Street Journal has a lot to say about it. Basically, what they say is, as for stress positions allowed for a time by the Pentagon, such as waterboarding, hooding, sleep deprivation, or exposure to heat and cold, these are psychological techniques designed to break a detainee. But light years away from torture. Perhaps, you know, some of the writers at the Wall Street Journal writing this editorial would like to subject themselves to this kind of treatment just to see what would happen. What they would be willing to say, whom they would be willing to rat out, including their paymasters, or whatever they can dream up in order to make this treatment stop. So, you know, it's an endless editorial here. I'm not going to continue with it. Everyone knows where I stand on this issue. And yes, you know, I would like to add, the Wall Street Journal is not your friend. The Wall Street Journal is not anyone's friend, including international investors who have listened to this journal and are now getting screwed also. A big sham is being exposed little by little. But by the time most of the American people hear about it, it will be too late. Our objections to this kind of policy and what has been going on, not just over the last 8 years, but previous to that, should have come earlier. Too many people are probably working too hard, they can't pay attention to it, and so it is left to some of us who do have just a little bit of time left to research some of the shit to inform others. But unfortunately, you know, we're not part of the glamorous corporate media who can get these messages out day after day after day, duping everyone once again. And then, of course, as it always happens, they will bring everyone together to applaud just how beautiful everyone has come together after the next big disaster, and how coherent our nation is, and that we have to defend against external enemies at all costs, when in fact our enemies are sitting in Washington, D.C., not only trying to destroy this nation, but also moving on to other nations in the process. I'm not sure what else to say about it. All I can say is read the press, which is gobbled up by our financial elites, and then tell me whether we are just stupid and don't know what's going on. Good night.